Alright. So, this has been a hard review for me to write, because before this playthrough I had very high opinion of Mario 64, but in this playthrough I've come to identify a lot of flaws that I feel may have been overlooked before. On a personal level, a reason for this may be because I haven't actually played the 64 version of this game for such a very long time, and all my most recent playthroughs have been on the DS version, which I think polished quite a few of the issues out. It's a classic, that much is definitely true, and it set the bar extremely high for 3D platformers, being a pioneer at the time of release. Mario 64 brought platforming to the third dimension by creating a clever hub world design with different levels denoted by paintings. The original reason for this was due to system limitations, and was originally how Zelda Ocarina of Time was going to be laid out, with Ganon's castle as the hub. This allowed the limited system resources to be reused every time Mario zones out of an area. Some people complain that this game kicking you out of the level mechanic after collecting each star ruins the pacing of the game. I will at least partially argue with that. Although it does slow the pacing significantly, and this is required for the game to last longer than about an hour, it also significantly adds to the sense of accomplishment associated with gaining each star. It's clearly a paradigm that works, as it remained all the way until Mario Odyssey on the Switch, way after the system limitation issue was solved. The controls are smooth and allow for a great variety of movement across the different levels and platforms. The levels are varied in biome and content and do roughly get harder as the game progresses. The issue I realised on this playthrough are the multiple bugs which can hinder progress, and that many of the stars have no hints other than, in many cases, an insanely obtuse level name. I understand the purpose for this is to encourage exploration, but often this starts to feel frustrating quite quickly, possibly due to the relatively slow pace of the game. I feel that locking each star behind the previous star is a mistake in this regard. I understand in most cases it's still possible to find later stars, but sometimes the world changes depending on which star you choose on entry. This creates a situation in most playthroughs I've had of the game where all the easiest stars have been collected. There are more easier stars later in the game, but I feel locked behind stars that I'm struggling with, and the game comes to a grinding halt. This brings me to my other point, where although the levels themselves do generally have a difficulty curve that goes up as you move through the game, with later levels having more pits that cause instant death than earlier levels, the difficulty of each star to attain seems totally random, with some middle stars in the lower levels being harder to attain than middle or even later stars in the upper levels of the castle. I understand each person is going to find different levels challenging compared to others, but I feel the overall difficulty of the curve of the game is slightly off in this regard. The camera is also terrible pretty much throughout, with very limiting controls and a camera angle that often means you can't see what you're aiming for. Also, don't even get me started on the Rainbow Ride level, which is essentially a 101 on how to make the player wait for a million years, get bored and go elsewhere for their entertainment. It's also worth noting that the story is famously lacking, but all Mario games are like this. Overall, I can see why some people don't like this game. The graphics haven't aged well, and overall, the game has a lot more flaws than my rose-tinted glasses wanted to admit. That being said, when you factor in when this game was developed and released, and that it was a pioneer of the 3D era, it's impossible not to admire exactly what has been accomplished here. This is an amazing first attempt, and a 3D platformer that is entertaining, replayable, and mostly very smooth. Most of the issues are due to system limitations rather than bad game design, and I feel Mario 64 deserves a lot of respect despite its slight issues. Gaming today would not be what it is without the 3D platformer that set the gold standard, Super Mario 64.